So I'm here today to talk to Anne Leavitt about a book that I find really, really, really interesting. So you transcribed the diaries of Charles Robin, or as you say, Charles Robin.
I did.
So this book from diaries written from 1767 to 1770, 1772 to 74, and 1787.
Mm-hmm. They were written a while ago.
So where did you find them?
I found them at the Archives Anselme Chasson at the University of Moncton in New Brunswick. Well, in fact, I didn't find them. A friend of mine, who many people around here know, Jocelyn Marchand, knew that I had been looking for them for a long time, and she stumbled upon them and told me they were there, and so I wrote the Archives and asked them if they would send me a copy, expecting to, spend a few bucks and get a paper copy in the mail. But instead, they sent me a digitized copy of the handwritten diaries that were written between 1776 and whatever it is. And then I wrote to the Historical Society in the Channel Islands in Jersey, because they had some ownership of that manuscript. And I asked them for permission to make it public here on Isle Madame or anywhere else, and they were happy to do so. So originally I thought I would just put them online, but his handwriting is pretty hard to navigate. A lot of his language is hard to navigate. And so I thought what we needed was a typed transcription. And not just a transcription, but a kind of word-for-word typed copy, but which fixed things up for a modern reader. So that's what this is.
Well, I've been glancing through it, and I find it just absolutely, exciting. I love it.
It's pretty cool.
Because now, he actually was French-speaking.
Yes.
But wrote his diary in English.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you suppose he did that?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, the Channel Islands are, some people think that they're part of Britain or part of England, and they are not. They're part of the old Duchy of Normandy, and certainly at this time that Charles is writing, English is not the language of the courts, it's not the language of the church, and it's not the language of the street. The language of the court and Paul is French. And the local language is what we would call Jersiais, which is a dialect of French. So, I think it gives an indication that Charles was probably well educated, came from a family that probably had dealings with, people in England, business dealings. There may be another reason. I speculate, I think in a footnote in the book, that he may have kept his diaries in English in case something happened to him or happened to his possessions, and it would indicate to the British authorities that he was not a citizen of France, which might have been the supposition if he'd written in French. But he writes to his Jersey sea captains in French, and there's a couple of draft letters in there. The Robbins Company, and I talk a bit about them in the foreword to the book, they tended to keep their business records in English. And Charles Robin and his brothers, because there were two of them, we remember him because he wrote lots. The other two didn't as much. Charles always writes to his sea captains in French. And, of course, when he's hanging out in this part of the world, and in Quebec, which is where he really spent the majority of his life, all of his conversations with local people would have been in French.
Wow. So I wonder how he ended up here.
Well, that's a really good question. He and his brothers, he had two brothers, Philip and John. When he writes in English, he calls them Philip and John. When he writes in French, he calls them Philippe and Jean. They were orphaned at a young age. Charles would have been about 11, I think, when his father died. His two brothers were slightly older than him. His parents had been shopkeepers in the town of Saint-Aubin in Jersey. So while middle class, they weren't wealthy. At a certain point, the three brothers team up with two Pipon brothers and probably some other investors, and they found a company called the Robin Pipon and Company, and they decide to establish a fishery in Cape Breton and the Baie de Chaleur in Quebec. There's no indication that the family had any connections, say, with the Newfoundland fishery. I mean, one of the things we know, this happens in 1764-65, they start the company. That's just after the 7-year war with France has ended. So the waters in this area, the waters of Cape Breton, the waters of Chaleur Bay, now represent an opportunity for those people interested in starting fishing establishments who are English-speaking and not allied with France. And so hordes of people, entrepreneurs, merchant adventurers, begin to start businesses. So Jean Robin, the middle brother, is a sea captain. He had done at least one voyage in Newfoundland in about 1764, I think. And he is the first Robin to come here. He sails here on board a ship, does a kind of exploratory lookabout. I guess he liked what he saw. And he goes back to Jersey, and with his two brothers, Charles and Philip, and the two Pipon brothers and other investors, sets up a company. And in 1765, Jean is here setting up a fishery on Isle Madame. And the following year, his brother, Charles, comes out. He may well have spent the winter here that year. And he subsequently goes to Passepébiac in Quebec and sets up a fishery there. And so for the rest of the time that Charles' diaries cover, Charles spends one winter here on Isle Madame, which is fascinating. He talks about all kinds of people. But the majority of his time, and in fact, the bulk of his life, is spent in Quebec. It's Jean Robin who runs the fishery on Isle Madame until the outbreak of the War of Independence, when Isle Madame is sacked by the naval commander. He's not a privateer, he's a naval commander, John Paul Jones. And John writes some letters to the government, which are accessible anyway. He's sort of complaining that he's not getting much help from the British in protecting the fishery. By about 1778, things are so bad that Jean leaves Cape Breton, Charles leaves Quebec, and the brothers, Charles doesn't come back to Quebec until after the war is over. John never comes back, but sends an agent to manage things here, and then unfolds the history of the companies that become what we know of as the Robin Jones and Whitman Company.
Mm-hmm. So now on Jerseyman Island, that's where they were, correct?
That is where they were. And it's hard to know what the function, Charles, again, only spends a winter here, and during the winter he's not fishing, right? He's doing lots of other things, but he's not fishing. The fishing season starts between about April, and it kind of winds up in October. And Charles's fishing operations are in Quebec. But while he's here, he is at his brother's establishment on Jerseyman Island and does a lot of maintenance work and refers to the facility. It strikes me as you read through the diaries that while I think the brothers had intended to set up a fishery proper in this part of Isle Madame, in Airshot, they actually didn't. The fishery, or the place where they collected the most fish and cured it, seems to have been in Petit de Gras, and even at this early date in Shetty Camp. The function of Jerseyman Island, or the Robin establishment, John Robin's establishment on Jerseyman Island, seems to have been a kind of central depot where fish from Quebec at the end of the season was shipped here. Fish from Shetty Camp was brought here. Fish from Petit de Gras was brought here, all piled onto ships and then sent to their respective markets, in the fall. And then in the spring, it was the central depot where the ships arrived, bringing crews and fishermen from Jersey. The Acadians who were here did not fish or were not employed by the Robin brothers. They traded with them, and they traded fish with them. But the Robin brothers brought their own workforce with them. And so they would have brought about 300 to Isle Madame and another probably 200 to 300 to Quebec. And they brought their ships and they brought their supplies with them for the rest of the season.
Wow.
So everything then was sort of sorted out in Airshot, and then Charles would head to Quebec, and John and his people would spread out through Cape Breton.
So now, was it called Airshot then?
It, in all the years of covering Charles Robin's diaries, he never consistently spells the name of this place. He does spell it as Airshot, as we spell it, for at least 1 year. Other times he calls it Narashak with an N, and various spellings of that. So it strikes me that it's a name that was in oral parlance. People spoke it, but there was little agreement as to how it, at least during this period of time, there's little agreement as to how it should be spelled.
So how old was he when he was here for that winter?
Oh, he was remarkably young.
Wow.
When Charles Robin arrives here in 1776, he's 23 years old.
Oh my gosh.
His brother's 26. I mean, they're young guys, right?
Wow. Driven. Oh, they had to be like...
Oh, amazing.
Because, I mean, to come from being orphans to that sort of... Oh, wow. That's pretty incredible.
Well, and they weren't, I mean, they were part owners in the company, but they're sent out. Charles refers to himself and his brother as agents. So they're sort of like the regional managers, right, for this company that's a bit of an upstart in the industry, right? Like, lots of companies, Jersey companies have been in the fish business, like the Janverns, the de Carterets. I mean, lots of big firms working in, say, in Newfoundland. These guys are young and they're upstarts. And so, in their 20s, and they go on to build, unbeknownst to them, a company that in Canadian economic history is second in age only to the Hudson Bay Company.
Wow. That's amazing.
It is amazing.
Wow. So you even have maps in this book.
I do.
That is so cool. And you can see the buildings.
Well, there's one map at the end, which I was delighted to discover. It was a map drawn in 1779 or was commissioned by the French Admiralty, who, of course, in 1779 were allied with the American colonies in their war against Britain in the American War of Independence. So this is a map drawn to incredible scale by the French Admiralty of the Airshot Harbor, and in great detail of Jerseyman Island. And when you blow the map up, when you magnify it, you can see the John Robin's fishing establishment on Jerseyman Island.
And it's amazing.
It's amazing.
It really is amazing. Now, I see here on this 1779 map of Airshot Harbor, it says, Plan de la Baie de Narashak.
Yes. So, and if you spell it out, right, it's...
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is just absolutely incredible. I mean, this is one of those... you never get to see this. To me, this is just priceless. This is priceless. You must have really enjoyed doing this.
I did. I mean, Yeah, I mean, every day was a discovery, right? And of course, I had to do a certain amount of research to find out some of the things he was talking about. But yeah, it was a delight. It was a delight to do it.
And there are words that were used then that, I see that you've given some definitions of some of these words used.
Yeah. I do offer a glossary. Well, there's a couple of challenges with Charles Robin, right? I mean, he's writing in the mid-1700s.
Yeah.
So a lot of things didn't have standardized spelling. And then, he's using a lot of terms that we don't use anymore.
Right. It's really quite amazing. Like a room is a fishing establishment.
Yes.
And see that? Yeah, that's like ball tropping. What's ball tropping? Ball troping.
Bolt roping.
Oh, bolt roping. Sewing pre-stitched rope onto slack sailcloth so that the strain of the wind's pressure will be carried by the rope before the sailcloth is stretched out fully.
There you go.
Who knew?
Who knew?
Who knew?
Who knew?
Wow. How do you say?
I'm not sure how you say it. I think it's an Algonquin word. For quidan, and it's
for a canoe.
For a canoe,
That is amazing.
Yeah.
So,
the one that puzzled me for a long time was, every once in a while he talks about going into outfitting a shallop or a schooner, and he talks about the bomb. And I thought, what in the name of heaven is anyway? By worrying about it, teasing with it, playing with it, and sort of looking at the context, he's referring to what we would call a ship's boom.
Oh, he calls it a bomb.
A bomb.
That's funny. Okay, so let's talk about how people can get their hands on this.
The Isle Madame Historical Society is printing these. Susan Marsh, Ontario, is printing these as we speak. And so my suggestion would be that if you want a copy, get in touch with the Isle Madame Historical Society, and I think you're going to let people know how to do that.
I sure am.
And we will try and get a copy into your hands. We're charging $25 per copy, and the proceeds of the sale goes to support the work of the Historical Society. And of course, cover the cost of printing.
Out of curiosity, how long did it take you to do this?
It was a great COVID project.
I bet.
It took me about 3 months to transcribe the diary. It was slow going. And then, of course, after it was done, it had to be proofread and formatted and all that good stuff. But yeah, about 3 months.
Well, you did your usual amazing work.
Thank you.
I'm an Anne Leavitt fan. I'll wait for your memoirs, Anne.
You'll be in them.
I know. So, I have ordered my copy of this book already. The moment I heard about it, I wanted it. If any of you want a copy of this book, I'm going to leave the details at the end of this segment. And I would suggest that this is a great Christmas present. This is actually a great gift for those, especially the older people who remember the stories and I think this is a fantastic piece of history. And we are so fortunate that someone was interested enough to find.
Crazy
Thank
enough.
you, Jocelyn, number one.
Yes, thank you,
Thank you, Jocelyn, and thank you, Anne. And thank you to the Historical Society for understanding the importance of it. I do understand the importance of it. And I wish you all the best with this publication.
Thanks very much, Becky.
Thank you, Anne.